Out of the flames of fear, we rise with courage of our deepest convictions to stand for justice, inclusion, and peace. Out of the flames of scrutiny, we rise to proclaim our faith with hope to heal a fractured and hurting world. Out of the flames of doubt, we rise to embrace the mystery, wonder, and awe of all there is and all that is yet to be. Out of the flames of hate, we rise with the force of love, love that celebrates our shared humanity. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. I'm Jason Opperly Russell, and I'll be your worship associate today. This is a welcoming congregation, and we are always working on how to better welcome and care for one another. If this is your first time joining us, we're so glad you're here. And whoever you are, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are. As we begin, we want to acknowledge that this church occupies land in Huichin, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. We understand that we continue to benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land, and we acknowledge and embrace our responsibility to take restorative action. We affirm that this is deeply felt and commit our congregation to be in the right relationship with Indigenous communities, aligning in solidarity, supporting Indigenous projects, and caring properly for the land. So, please take a moment and prepare yourself and your space for our time together. You might get a candle and a way to light it so that you can join the chalice lighting at home. Now, as Reverend Michelle lights the chalice flame, let's kindle our own flames along with her to these words by Julianne Lepp. We seek our place in the world and the answers to our heart's deepest questions. As we seek, may our hearts be open to unexpected answers. May the light of our chalice remind us that this is a community of warmth, of wisdom, and welcoming of multiple truths. We also pause to remind ourselves of some of the foundations of resilience. With Reverend Michelle, we light a candle of courage, a candle of acts of service, and a candle of hope. May we find and cultivate these in ourselves and in one another. Now, please join us in singing our opening song, Guide My Feet. The words will be on the screen.
Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain, race in vain. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain, race in vain. Stand by me while I run this race. Stand by me while I run this race. Stand by me while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain, race in vain. Search my heart while I run this race. Search my heart while I run this race. Search my heart while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain, race in vain.
Please join me in saying our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
Good morning. My name is Bryan Baker, and you're about to see a video of a piece called Didn't My Lord Deliver Daniel? This is a spiritual, from a Negro spiritual is the correct title. It's from the slave period. It was written by people who were enslaved. And it's a remarkable piece of music. Slaves were not supposed to be educated. It was illegal. They were allowed to attend services. So the Bible was a frame of reference for them. And they took hope as they could from the stories in the Bible. And Daniel being delivered from the lion's den, Jonah from the whale, stories like that were enormously compelling. Many of the spirituals had coded messages in them, language about how it would be best to plan an escape. And so they would put these messages inside many, though not all, of the spirituals. In this one you'll hear, when the wind blows west and the wind blows east, that would be a good time to try to escape because it was harder to track somebody if it was a blustery or a stormy day. There's also a remarkable line in this one. It says, didn't my Lord deliver Daniel? Why not every man? And there's quite a statement just in that being every man, because at this time, enslaved people were not considered humans. They were treated just like cattle and pigs. They were a possession. And so for the people who were enslaved to sing, every man, or when we sing, this little light of mine, that was a real statement of stepping aside, moving out of the bounds of what holds you down. So this is a song about hope and freedom and self-reliance and owning your own rights.
The Hill We Climb by Gorman.
When day comes, we ask ourselves where we can find light in this never-ending shade.
The loss we carry, a seam we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms of notions of what just isn't always justice. And yet dawn is ours before we know it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed
a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished.
We, the successors of a country and a time, with a skinny black girl, descended from slaves and raised by a single mother,
can dream of becoming president only to find herself reciting for one.
And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to find a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose.
To compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, and characters, and all conditions of man.
And so we lift our gaze not to what stands between us, but to what stands before us.
We close the divide because we know to put our future first. We must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tired, we tried.
That we forever will be tied together, victorious. Not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us that to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine of victory, and no one shall make them afraid. If we are to live up to our own time, and the victory won't lie in the blade, but all the bridges we've made, that promise to glade the hills we climb if only we dare. It's because being American is more than the pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that will shatter our nation, rather than share it. Would destroy our country if meant delaying democracy, and this effort very neatly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we must trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the area of redemption. It's feared for inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour. But within ourselves we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? How we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be. A country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation, becoming the future. Our blunders become their burdens, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright.
So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. Every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, I will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the golden hills of the west. We will rise from the windswept northeast where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover.
For every nook of our nation and every corner called our country, our people diverse and beautiful, or emerge battered and beautiful.
When day comes, we step out of the shade of flame and unafraid. The new dawn balloons as we free it, for there is always light. If only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it.
Wasn't that great, hearing the voices of our kids, our youth, here in our service? I want to give a shout out to Katie Lipka, who helped to pull that video together. And it was great seeing the different places around our area that the kids found meaningful, including our own periwinkle garden behind the church. And now I invite us to take a time in our service, this time that we open up and care for our hearts and those of those around us. We lift up and hold the joys and the sorrows, the concerns we may each be facing. During this time, during our service, as well as throughout the service, I invite you to share any joys or concerns or significant milestones of your own in the comment section. I invite us all to hold these cares in the embrace of this community. Let us join now in a moment of silence. Please join me in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of light and love, spirit of resistance, spirit of generosity, that which serves as our conscience in this work that we do to dismantle white supremacy, to empower the marginalized, to insist that Black lives matter. We have been angered, we have been saddened, we have been pushed to the brink ever again. We are also inspired and seem resolved to do better, to not simply get to the other side of this moment, but to get there morally healthier, to get to a safer space for Black bodies and bodies of color. Spirit, help us to understand that we each have a role in this work, for our liberations are tied to one another's. Give us the clarity of mind to know what our individual part is in the struggle, that there are many ways to protest injustice. Help us to find our way and commit to it. Spirits, we ask for guidance. Send us strength and endurance. Help us to give our all to this and hold nothing back, for precious lives depend on it. We will be imperfect. Rest assured we will mess up over and over and over again, but we must do it anyway. May we summon the courage to tear down these systems of injustice and get busy creating a world community with justice for all. Amen. Let's join now in singing We Would Be One.
Love.
In the next part of our service, you're going to get to hear from our People of Color Caucus and who collaborated to help to bring this service together, especially Lonnie Moseley and Helen Tinsley-Jones. They'll be sharing the words of I Dream a World by Langston Hughes. We have some fabulous music, and then get to hear from some of our parents and grandparents about some of their work to bring thoughts about justice and race and anti-racism into their work with their little ones. And I hope you continue to enjoy our service for this Black History Month.
I dream a world where one, no other one, will scorn.
Where love will bless the earth and peace its paths adorn.
I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way.
Where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day.
A world I dream where black or white, whatever race you be,
will share the bounties of the earth, and everyone is free.
Where wretchedness will hang its head, and joy like a pearl.
At ends the needs of all humankind, of such I dream, my world.
I dream a world where one, no other one, will scorn.
Where love will bless the earth, and peace its paths adorn.
I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way.
Where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day.
A world I dream, where black or white, whatever race you be,
will share the bounties of the earth, and everyone is free.
Where wretchedness will hang its head, and joy like a pearl
attends the needs of all humankind. Of such I dream my world.
Of such I dream, of such I dream, of such I dream, of such I dream, of such I dream. wretchedness will hang its head, and joy like a pearl attends the needs of all humankind. Of such I dream, of such I dream, of such I dream, I dream of love.
Our family has had the benefit of membership with this church for decades, and we've informed ourselves about issues of social justice and race, which is, you know, the three big ones of Martin Luther King: race, militarism, and social justice. Sorry, but yeah, it's been, we, you know, as a family of three, I had an older son, he died, but the three of us learned together from the sermons and from the RE programs and from the Social Justice Committee, and it definitely changed us.
This is a topic that I've really struggled with because on the one hand, you know, my kids are still fairly little. Melinda, not so much anymore, but Luke's 6. He's not that old. And I will say that, you know, I've taught RE for many years, and those issues of social justice do arise in the curriculum. And so that's been a nice starting point for my conversations with Melinda, who has been old enough to go to RE. But Luke was too little. Like, he was, you know, by the time he was old enough to go out to RE, we were in the middle of COVID, and we weren't, you know, they weren't really doing RE. And so I was like, how am I going to have these conversations with him? Driving down even in COVID, right? You're just driving down the street and you see some folks with Black Lives Matter, you know, signage. And our school had a parade, and so we were making the posters in our house, and I was like, well, we can't make the posters unless I say something about why we're making these posters.
Hi, this is Michael. So in my work with the religious education program and having a biracial daughter, I would say there are 3 overarching themes that I have really addressed and looked at. One is, don't assume that you truly understand someone else's experience who is of a non-Caucasian background. It's really important to understand or to know or recognize that you truly can't understand what it's like to walk into a grocery store or a retail store and have the security guard follow you just because you look a certain way. I've never experienced that, but many of other people have. The second theme from that is really listen. Learn to listen to their experience, to their understanding, and lastly, to kind of challenge and recognize your own biases that are still present. The best thing I can do as a Caucasian man is to really challenge my own biases and really listen to others.
I kind of like Pierre. I didn't want to talk about, you know, or when my children were little, it was something, you know, that I didn't want them to see the ugliness of that when they were very little. But a lot of times they became aware of it. I would play them stories, you know, like stories on tape, or we would read books that had to do with character, you know, not characters, people who had had experienced racial or social injustice. And so sometimes we would, you know, it would be through that they would learn that, you know, these things happen in the world. And by the time Black Lives Matter and all that happened, they were old enough that we actually, you know, we talked about it and we participated in many of the protests. And especially my older daughter went to many. So that was part, by that time they were more aware. And my father had experiences because of the way he looked, and so sometimes he would talk about that with the girls, and so they learned about the injustices. And anyway, and now my older daughter is actually going to go into education and prison studies, so she's very, very much into social justice.
And speaking as a parent, and this was, I'm sure, affected by the fact that I started at Star King Seminary, which has a strong anti-oppression focus when my daughter was 4. But then, or even before then, one of my hopes was to just talk about stuff in the world as it really is. Yes, there's shielding and protection we do as parents, but I decided to counter some of the narrow perspective and narrow history that she was getting from so much of society. I remember one time we went through this little weird museum that was animals and some Native Americans and a little bit of history, and I said, you know, this is weird. Let's talk about why that this little teepee setup is weird and a combination of several different nations, and why this is appropriation, and let's talk about some Native American history. And we did. And another adult who was with me was horrified. And I'm like, this is the way the world is. We're going to talk about this. And another time when she was learning about the time of the French Revolution, but from the perspective of the royal family. And the folks who were telling it kept saying, and when they left, and when they left. So afterwards, I said to my daughter, you're wondering what they say when they left? And she goes, yeah, that's a little weird. And we talked about the economic disparity and poverty and revolution. And she just soaked it all in, asked really great questions. She was 11 at the time of that conversation.
My son's wife is African American, and my 2 grandchildren are mixed race. And when he was probably 19 or 20, he, in the evening, 9 o'clock in the evening, was walking down the street. They lived in Oakland at the time. He's walking down the street, carrying his guitar in his hand, and the police picked him up for walking down the street and wouldn't let him call his father, and he went to jail for a night for walking down the street. What my son did after that was promptly leave and move to Colorado, leave Oakland and move to Colorado.
I would say the first one is related to the rise of anti-Asian sentiment that is kind of present right now. And like, that's been super challenging for me to talk about personally, because I would say that I've actually been a very privileged person of color in my life. Until like this rise of anti-Asian sentiment, like it was like for the first time when COVID started, when COVID arrived and people were like, oh my gosh, it's from China. It's, you know, it's like the Chinese people are like, you know, the Chinese government, it's like, it's really awful. And I went into the grocery store and I felt for the first time in my life, I was getting the side eye from people. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is really uncomfortable. And I'd never personally experienced it before. And so I was talking about this with my husband, and my daughter unbeknownst to me, was listening. And she was like, what do you mean? Like, you think people like were giving you, like, who were like looking at you weird because you're Chinese? And then I had to, then, you know, that opened to the conversation of, oh, well, there's a bunch of people in the country who think that, people like Chinese people caused the pandemic and are like purposely, like all sorts of things. And she was really upset. She was like, what, oh my God.
Hi, this is Michael. So again, my daughter is of mixed race, and but it's not immediately evident that she is part Chinese. And my family is Caucasian, and we were back east, and one of my family members was talking disparagingly about the Chinese, and not realizing that Leah was part Chinese. And it broke my heart because she felt like she couldn't say anything. No. She was alone in the room. Yeah. And she couldn't say anything. And she talked to me afterwards about how mad she was. And I wasn't immediately there to hear it, so I didn't know it was happening. But it was heartbreaking to have my daughter, who is, I am woman, hear me roar, feel like she couldn't say anything in a room when her culture and ethnic background was being talked about disparagingly. It was really heartbreaking.
My older daughter was in a class, and they put the classes into discussion groups, and they were supposed to choose either, there was like the Caucasian group and the BIPOC group, and she broke down crying because she didn't know where she belonged. Because she looks Caucasian. People don't realize she's Hispanic.
Well, my son, Michael, whom I'm very proud of, this wasn't a racial situation, but it was a situation about bullying in his school. And at a school assembly, he was in 4th grade at the time, and in a predominantly Black neighborhood in Richmond. But he stood up in a school assembly and delivered an impassioned speech about bullying in the school. He got a standing ovation from parents and the students. But that's, Michael, I think, really, he absorbed a lot from the church and from the RE program. And he still, he has some really good standards for social consciousness.
I think that these racial situations can be overcome in families, as they are continuing to be in my family. So anyway, I just think that out of diversity, sometimes the learning that happens makes really good things on the other side. So I think that's what I would have to say.
The two things I want my daughter and the RE, the young people that I teach, to take away is that our youth really can make a difference, even when things seem insurmountable. And then secondly, small acts of civil disobedience can really have an impact. Challenge a conversation when you're there and feel empowered to do so.
A poem by Amanda Gorman. To begin again isn't to go backwards, but to decide to go. Our story is not a circle carved, but a spiral, shed, shaped, spinning, shifting inward and outward ad infinitum, like a bank of speech breathe on us. We disembark both beside and beyond, who we are, who we were. It is all a return and a departure. We spiral on, pushing up and out, like a growing thing making its form out of earth. In a poem, there is no end, just a place where the page glows, wide and waiting, like a lifted hand, poised and paused. Here is our bond, unbordered by bone. Perhaps love is how it feels to breathe the same air. All we have is time, is now. Time takes us on. How we are moved says everything about what we are to each other and what are we to each other, if not everything.
Hi, my name is Natalie Campbell, and I've been a UUCB member for about 4 years now. Since joining, I've been really impressed by this church's generosity, in both money and spirit. As the co-chair of the Social Justice Council and the coordinator for the monthly Good Neighbor program, I have been able to witness the open-handed, open-hearted attitude this church puts forward on a regular basis. As a congregation, we've raised thousands of dollars to share with members of our local community who really need help. UUCB members have stepped up to provide food and funds to food banks, cars and clothes to the unhoused, and time and attention to children who desperately need a caring adult in their lives. I'm proud to be a UUCB contributing member because I know that my monthly pledge goes to the kind of programs that make our community thrive. We work hard on the Social Justice Council to tackle important issues in an unjust and unequal world. We have forums and work parties and targeted projects to take on injustice wherever it might be found. And those programs and projects take money. When our congregation makes a commitment to a monthly pledge, groups like the Social Justice Council can make a budget and plan projects and make a difference in the world. Won't you please join me in making a monthly pledge to UUCB? It feels so good to know that our contributions help to make our community and our world a better place for everyone. Thank you.
As we commit together to make this loving community, we take time to remember that UUCB needs our gifts and support. We invite you now to make an offering. Each week, half of our offerings are shared with a good neighbor organization that needs our financial support. And we hope that you will continue to practice generosity with them during this difficult time. This month, our good neighbor is Collaborizing, a nonprofit in Richmond. Collaborating's mission is to explore humanity through social and cultural exchange. It primarily focuses on race equity work and promotes positive social change through activities such as improving conditions in homeless encampments, using restorative justice principles to resolve conflicts, and movement building and community organizing. It currently sponsors a community gardening project on the Richmond Greenway. More information can be found at www.collaborizing.org. Offerings of any value are received with gratitude. Details on how to give electronically will appear on your screen as our offertory begins. Thank you. Please join me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service.
It has been so good being together today at this time for our worship service. Before we shift to our coffee hour on Zoom and whatever else you may be doing today or whatever day it is when you're viewing this video, may I remind you to check out all the things that are available in our congregation. Check out our website, uucb.org, or our weekly email, The Week Ahead, and you can find a link on our website in news to The Week Ahead if you missed it in your inbox, just to see all of the many things going on in our diverse and varied community. And before we join in singing our closing song, I wanted to share at least a little bit of reasoning for why I'm picking and having us sing Lift Every Voice and Sing throughout the month of February. A number of years ago, I was at a banquet during Martin Luther King weekend, and the banquet was at least 3/4, if not more, African American, and then other folks, allies, and other folks in the community made up the remainder. And towards the end, after the banquet, after we had had the presentations, everybody stood up to sing, lift every voice and sing. And I found myself utterly embarrassed at how poorly the white folks in the room knew and sang that song. And I swore to myself from then on that I was going to have every largely white UU congregation I served forevermore sing that song at least a month every year so that we can have it in our memories, if not in our bones and hearts as well. So I invite you to join in singing the amazing, beautiful song together, Lift Every Voice and Sing. The words will be on screen.
Every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Sing the rising sun, the new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stormy the road we trod, bitter the chasing rod, felt in the days when home unborn has died. Yet with a steady beat, have not a weary feet, come to the place for which our fathers died. We have come over the way where the tears have been watered. We have gone treading a path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past till we stand at last where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. None of our wearies, none of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy light led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places our honor we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shall beneath thy hand may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Our closing words are by Amanda Gorman. Every day we are learning how to live with essence, not ease, how to move with haste, not hate, how to leave this pain that is beyond us behind us. Just like a skill or any art, we cannot possess hope without practicing it. It is the most fundamental craft we demand of ourselves. And now, from this time of worship, may you go with hope, that practicing hope that we are trying to go with connection, with peace, and with courage. And remember, you are never all alone. Blessed be.